Welcome to Storycomic Presents, where we interview amazing storytellers and artists. This is episode 236. I'm your host, Barney Smith of Storycomic.com, and we're excited to have back with us the internationally acclaimed and highly talented children's book author and graphic designer, Marek Gonyea.
Ta-da.
So listen, so this is like old home days for me, Mark, because you were episode 2 for me.
I thought I didn't know if I was 2 or 3, but
Right. That was
yeah,
almost 3 years ago
that
now.
was pre-pandemic.
That was. Yep. Back then we were talking, it's like, yeah, there's something that might be happening
Right,
in China. We're not sure what
right,
it
right,
is,
right.
but yeah, yeah. Let's
Yeah,
just
it's a
talk
long
about
time.
graphic design. But you know what? So you've been busy over the past few years. You have been surprisingly busy in finding things to do. And
Yeah,
and I know we'll talk about it for the audio podcast listeners on there. We will be showing we'll for our show notes, we'll send a link to your website and some of your links to some of your wood carvings that you've done, your laser cuttings, and some of the games that you've designed already over the past few years. Do you want to kind of talk people briefly on what you've been up to the last
y-
few years?
yeah. Mostly, I got my hands in a lot of different areas right now, but for the last few years, I've really been focusing on the board game space.
Hmm.
Um, so I've been designing games and producing games. One of the reasons I got a laser cutter, and that game right there, Tapa, is they're cutting prototype boards right now. I'm working with a guy in Michigan that's going to be doing like all wood versions of the game. Like he's making the
Hmm.
boards, he's going to be able to print the box and the pieces. The only thing we're going to be buying the checkers that are part of the game, but that's just convenience. So that's what I've really been doing. Like I've been Tapa was the first game. The second game is called Galaxy Well, Gravity Well.
Okay.
Galaxy Well is a pretty good name too.
Oh, write that down. There you go.
Yeah. So it's a lot of play testing and a lot of design and a lot of cutting and a lot of doing everything again and again, and a lot of rules updates and that kind of a thing. But I love the idea of kind of these miniature strategic games, like
Right.
because just of the way you have to choose to move and what happens when you do make that decision, it kind of changes the game and it becomes something else. And it's really, for Tapa especially, like it's for such a small game and such a few, for having so many few options to do, there's
Mm.
a lot of strategy that you can play because it's kind of like a physical rock paper scissors type game. So every move has a positive and negative against what, depending on what your opponent does. So it's really interesting to me. And that's going to be, we're probably about a month away from like a limited production run on that.
Are you doing that are you doing top as a Kickstarter?
I don't know yet. I'm not sure yet. I know what my next Kickstarter is going to be. Is a uh, postcard book because I've been
Okay.
doing a lot of postcards. I kind of moved away from posters because everyone has limited wall space to put things up. So I started doing postcards, and those have been relatively successful. I've been doing one or two of those a year for a while. And I'm taking one of the more successful ones was called Minimal Motivation. So I'm
Mm.
taking all of those and creating a postcard booklet out of it where it's all cardstock and it's perforated so you can fold the card and use it as you
Oh, cool.
pull out of the book and things like that. So that's going to have 24 postcards in it. So I'm really happy about that. And that's very much it's very much my kind of sense of humor, where it's kind of like I want to be encouraging, but I'm also very sarcastic. So it's like good job, sort of. So that'll be interesting. Hopefully that does well.
So talk to us a little bit about some of the other games that you've been making as well. Because what now I remember when you were on a couple years ago, you're talking about that mission to Planet Hex
Yep.
was in production. Like you were working
Yes.
on that.
That's completely done. The guy that made the game is doing the convention circuit and playing in large groups. And I think it's doing fairly well. Like, I don't know his sales numbers or anything like that, but I think they just came out with the expansion deck to this, so it must be doing all right.
Oh wow, okay.
Which is another, I think 50 or 60 cards on top of the like 150 you get with the deck.
Did you design those other for the expansion as well?
Yes. Yep. I did all the artwork for this, and I did all the artwork for the expansion. And the expansion, this one's called Mission to Planet Hex. The expansion is called Beyond Mission to Planet Hex. And I think he's working on a second expansion, but I'm not sure what that's called. And I haven't started the artwork for that yet. So that'll be this year at some point. But yeah, that was a great project like that. And I think I've mentioned this before. Like, it's one of the 5 bucket list projects I've always wanted to do. Like, just do the entire visual identity for a board game kind of a thing. So that was one. My own children's book was one, so I've done that. This is a good segue, my own comic cover for a mainstream comic company. That was on the bucket list, and that happened in the last year, which was really interesting because that's 27 years after I graduated from the Kubert School. And I've done my own comics and I've done my own covers, but I've never done a mainstream cover for any of the big, let's say 4 or 5 companies.
So yeah, so we have so you did, so talk to us for our audio listeners. Describe the comic book cover you did and what was the comic book cover for?
The comic book cover was for issue 3 of a book called Quick Stops from Dark Horse Comics, written by Kevin Smith. And that came about because, and I vaguely remember this, like a year ago, I follow Kevin Smith on Twitter, and I vaguely remember him putting out a tweet that was like, hey, we're doing this series. If you think your style is something applicable to this kind of storytelling, drop a link, some samples, and we'll take a look at it. And I almost never do that kind of thing because, 1,000 people do it, and nobody ever responds to any of it. It's just, but this one, I was like, okay, it's Kevin Smith, it's Dark Horse. It would be really super cool if it happened. And even if it didn't happen, it'd be nice if Kevin Smith or Dark Horse just saw the kind of work that I do. So I dropped a link, and literally like 8 months later, I never talked to Kevin Smith directly, but someone working with Kevin, Spencer, contacted me on Twitter. It was like, hey, I'm working with this Dark Horse project and Kevin Smith. We think your artwork would be great for a cover. Are you interested? The catch is we need it in a month. And I was like, okay. And I sent an email back to him. I was like, well, okay. He let me know what they were thinking for the cover. They were like, the book is, issue 3 is about Elias, one of the new characters introduced in Clerks 2. So we'd like the cover to be kind of a recap of his story and his arc from Clerks 2, just kind of as a refresher course for everyone. And I was like, all right, well, let me rewatch Clerks 2, and then I'll sit there with a sketch pad and I'll jot some stuff down. And if I think I can do it in a month, I'll let you know first thing tomorrow. So that night, I own Clerks 1, but I didn't own Clerks 2. So I bought Clerks 2 on Amazon. I watched it twice. I kind of like paused, sketched a little bit, rewound, played again. I ended up watching the movie twice that evening. And you see in that first image all the thumbnail sketches. I did that the first night, and I was like, okay, that I can get this done in a month. With this worked well enough that I can definitely turn this into a finished piece of artwork in 100 and something hours. So got back to him, and I'd sent them. So I scanned that, sent them the thumbnails, and they're like, "Yeah, that looks great. Let's do it." I'm like, "Okay, great." So then 3 weeks, and I had sent them updates every week. I sent them an update of what I had done that week, and it was usually about a third of the poster was done.
Right.
And I knew they had sent me the mock-up of the cover, so I knew I was only going to have that square area to work with, but I wanted to do a full 9 by 12 story poster that I've
Okay.
normally done, because I knew I wanted to be able to edit out panels that maybe didn't work or weren't necessary for the really quick retelling of the story. Um, so they were really happy with it, and I ended up being they approached me as being the alternate cover, and it ended up being the normal cover. I don't know.
Oh
I'm not sure.
wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is
Huh.
the one that, like, if stores ordered the book, this is the one. This is the cover they got, and then they got more of the alternate cover. And I wish I should have prepared. I forget. He's on Twitter as well, but the artwork for the alternate cover is pretty spectacular. I'm kind of amazed they went with mine and not the other one, because it's pretty incredible.
Do you own that 9 by 12, or did you have to hand over that image to say that belongs to them, or does that image belong to you?
Well, I mean, I have the piece of paper with the pencil sketches on it. I do own
Right.
that. They own the artwork. They own the
Okay.
finished digital artwork.
Okay.
Um, and I imagine I could probably sell the sketch if I wanted to somewhere down the road, but I don't think I ever would.
Right.
Um, so yeah, like, I can't make posters of the
Oh, you
finished.
can't.
No, no, no,
Okay.
no.
No. So what were some so as you say, you got your 9 by 12, but then you got the square. So
Yep,
you're looking at so you had to edit out.
yep.
So how did you choose, or did they choose which images were taken out?
No, no. Basically, if you look, like, you can see in that sort of bottom third, there's a lot of the blue images, a
Right, I
lot of
see
the
that.
close-ups. A lot of
Yeah.
those were taken out, and I only had to take out, even the 9 by 12 is only 108 panels, I think, somewhere around there.
Mm,
So I didn't have to take out that many panels. I only had to take out 8, and I
okay.
could take out probably 5 or 6 just from that row alone. And
Right.
then it was just mostly that was what the decision was. It was like, because they're silent posters, I tend to add a lot of close-ups to get expression and reaction. There's a lot of, like, action reaction shots. So sometimes I'll delete the close-up, or delete the or combine an action reaction in one panel, kind of a thing. My favorite, and it's tough to see because I don't to without zooming in, but I love actually the very last panel where it's both of them back in the quickie mart, and then
Right.
the film fades to black and white. And I
Right.
thought that was just as great in the movie, and also works really well
As a
as
bookend.
as a
Yeah.
print. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's so interesting to me how the same, like, if you retell the same story in different media, how the experience is different as well. Like, watching something visually, like a movie or a television show, is a completely different form of getting a story than a comic, where you're flipping,
Right.
even if you're flipping pages. And then even the poster, a narrative poster, is different from a comic, where, because you're not flipping, but you're kind of eyeballing each panel on its own. And then the how do you slow down the action within a stagnant format?
How did you also decide what your color palette was gonna be in between all the other images?
Right. And that is, for me, that was dictated by the brands in the movie. Like, the
Right.
purple and yellow is, there's a restaurant, a fast food restaurant in the movie called Movies. and the brand colors of that restaurant are purple and yellow, or purple and gold. And so that was originally, I wanted it to be all very monochromatic or dual chromatic of purple, gold, and like shades of those colors. And if I had had more time, I might have been able to knock this image back to that original concept. But because of time, sometimes you just have to go with the not the most expedient, but the most direct route.
Right.
And that was making it as close to the movie as I could
Right.
visually, so and that's dictated, like that whole blue section in the middle there's a party that happens and later in the movie where all the lighting is like blue spotlight kind of stuff, and that really actually lends itself very well to a print medium visually. That's one of the things I like to do in these story posters, is every so often change the color palette if it's a full color piece kind of thing.
Right. And also too, as you mentioned, is that when you separated this out, because you said you watched the movie twice. So looking at putting your graphic design hat on this piece here, and almost, did you basically kind of storyboard it into 108 images, and then from there kind of decide what you were going to put in?
Yeah, exactly. Basically, you have to. For me, I wanted to decide what the poignant bits of each scene were. One
Right.
thing about Kevin Smith movies is they're funny, but they're also a lot of talking. So I almost had to rely on the more slapstick aspects of the film to say, oh, okay, well, that person slips and falls at that moment, so I'm going to include that because that's action. That this poster could have been 100 panels of heads talking back and forth with different, close up, medium shot, long shot, close up, because that's his banter in the movies is really quick. But there are also these moments of physical humor that I really had to kind of focus on, and there's long stretches of conversation that in the movie that might be just 2 panels in the poster, but then
Right.
there's a 30-second slapstick or action type scene that ends up being 8 panels in the poster, even though it's much less screen time. which I
Has
found really interesting.
Right. Because I know you've done. I'm really curious about this, because you've done in the past. You've done, and you've been really good at saying, "Hey, I watched this movie, so making a movie, my version of a movie
Yeah,
poster about."
that's a lot of the story posters are that.
Right.
Well, no, a lot. 10% of them are that.
And in some of your story posters, have you ever thought about doing that same thing what you did for Clerks 2, and doing something along those lines for other movies, other stronger IPs?
Yeah, absolutely. That it's tough because that does get into copyright and trademark and things like that. I have done. I was going to turn Alice in Wonderland Through the Looking Glass
Mm,
into an illustrated story at one point, and I got chapter 1 done. I think there's 12 chapters in the whole book. But even
okay.
chapter 1 took me like 3 months to do. So I was like, okay, this will be a long-term project. So I much prefer doing my own work and my own
Right.
original concepts. Um, Only because you kind of avoid the landmines at doing that. Uh, I just thought of earlier today, I just had a concept that I know I'm definitely going to make a poster out of. And it's a follow-up. There's a poster, one of my very first, one of the first 5 posters I did was one called Pizza Man. and it's basically autobiographical me delivering pizza kind of a poster. I just thought then one of the board games that I want to create coming up is um, Apocalypse Shop, where it's basically I've been playing a lot of Fallout 76. One of the game aspects of that, trust me on this, I'm going somewhere. Uh, one of the game mechanics in that video game is you have a vendor and you go out and you find materials and you scrap them and you break them down into their component parts, and you can sell those component parts in your vendor, quote unquote, for other players to buy to make their own things. I love that concept. I completely want to make a board game called Apocalypse Shop where you're a shopkeeper in the apocalypse and your job is to just keep the shelves stocked in the apocalypse. So you go out and you gotta scrap together what you can get to sell. And then that brought me to, do they still deliver pizza in the apocalypse? So I want to do a follow up of the Pizza Man poster called Pizza Apocalypse, or a pizza. Well, yeah, Pizza Apocalypse would be good.
Yeah.
Uh, where you're a pizza delivery guy in the apocalypse, and it would be this epic like one delivery story, you know, where he has to go like halfway across the continent to deliver a pizza, fighting all, you know, zombies and all these things. So I just think that would just be such, to me, I that's so absurd that I find that very amusing.
So here I got the thing for you now. Okay,
Yeah.
is that if it's not delivered in
Right.
under 30 days, and it's free. See.
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, it was, the ending was either going to be that or, okay, but I ordered a soda too. You know, then he's gonna go back in the soda. I don't know. So that's definitely that. I like that idea enough. It's every once in a while you have an idea and you're like, okay, that is definitely going to happen.
Right.
You know, usually it's 20 ideas and one happens. Sometimes it's one for one.
So if people want to go to markgonyea.com, check it out. Under your graphic designs, are these the things that we're looking at, like your book covers and promotional posters? Are these works that you were jobs that you actually were given, or this was just side things that you were putting together?
Nope, those are all paid things that were professional graphic design jobs, gigs.
Wow.
Yeah, for
Okay.
sure. That's probably 90% paid work, and then there's some that I just did that I thought I liked at the time. I almost never go out looking for work. It's
Hmm.
usually somebody sees my Twitter or they see my website or they see, actually a lot of it has come from Kickstarters too. A lot of
Okay.
people, that's actually where the Planet Hex game came from. He saw something I posted on my Twitter about a Kickstarter and contacted me because he liked the style and he thought it was appropriate for the game.
Right.
And that's, I haven't gone out. I haven't like cold called any businesses almost ever since I've been on my own. Yeah, which is extremely fortunate. That's
Right. Oh, one of the things that you were working on also over the last couple of years was your laser cutting. You have been posting things left and right
yeah.
on Twitter about some of your laser cutting. How did you get into something? Is this the natural progression of doing your style of art to like make it three-dimensional? Because some
There,
people would buy a 3D printer. You naturally, by your art style, seems to fit better with laser cutting. Is that true?
I did a lot of research. I researched laser cutters for about 3 years before I bought one, and then I researched the differences between a lot of the things that I could sort of do the same thing. Because yeah, the 3D printers create the 3D dimensions. The laser cutter, with a little help, can create 3 dimensions. Um, there's a CNC machines which do a lot of what a laser cutter can do, but it's a different. It uses a drill bit instead of a laser.
Hmm.
I did a ton of research on it, and for me, it just felt. like the laser cutter was most applicable to my basic sense of design in
Right.
that, and also because the laser I got was the Glowforge, and one of their sales bits was it's Adobe Illustrator compatible, which
Oh,
for
okay.
me was huge because that's the program I use 95% of the time.
Right.
So for me to be able to create a design in Illustrator, export it as a file that I can then import directly into the Glowforge to cut. I mean, that's a no. That was once that decision was made, it was like okay, and it's been great. I've had the laser for 2 years, and other than a hiccup here and there, it's been super flawless. So,
When you do it, so this is mostly you'd have to use like it's all wood cutting though, right? This isn't anything you
correct.
could use for okay.
Well, yeah, no, I'm trying to think of how. I mean, you could do this. So it's one of the things I'm doing now is because I turned my Etsy shop into all print on demand a few
Mm,
months ago. I'm now in the process of converting my studio, which was mostly poster storage, into a mini wood shop. So I could do this kind of thing with like a jigsaw or a bandsaw and maybe a drill press and a belt sander. You can't I could do it larger scale kind of a thing,
mm,
which is something I'd like to experiment with and do
right.
actual like bigger pieces kind of a thing. Where I could
So
do I could make larger things um, on the laser cutter, but I have a limit thickness that I can cut, which is about a
okay.
quarter inch.
So talk to us about your Etsy shop as well. So
Yeah,
you said you're doing things print on demand. What would be your advice? How did you research this? What were some of the advice you would give people that want to start their own Etsy shop on that? And how is print on demand working for you?
right. My number one criteria for print on demand was print quality, far and above.
Right.
Like I was willing to price things a bit higher for a better quality print. And I go through Printful, one because the samples that I ordered were incredible. Like print quality is off the chart, and it integrated really easily with Etsy. It's not seamless, but it is pretty quick to from uploading an image to Printful and then synchronizing it with the Etsy shop to have it for sale. A really nice poster, and it's been great in general. It's hard to say because I shut my shop down for about 8 months while I was doing research
Okay.
and getting posters together and images set. That was the other thing. I had to kind of reformat everything for Printful. So I think I have 136 posters on Etsy now. So that was a good few weeks of work to just make everything compatible with Printful
Oh,
and
so
Etsy.
what did you have to do to do that then?
The images, well, one, I wanted a lot of the images when I do my own printing are not full bleed. So I'll have
Okay.
like a quarter or a half inch border around them. So I'd have to reformat that. And more often than not, I could just blow the image up. But for real quality, you'd want to go back to the original digital and then re-import that into a Photoshop full bleed and then re-export that out as a file for Printful. And Printful takes PNG files,
Right.
which is not what whatever. Usually I'm sending PDFs to printers,
Right.
but I forget if Printful takes PDFs, but I've been sending Printful PNGs. So that was another
S-
redoing of all of that.
But you would have to initially have that as a vector image anyway, correct?
Correct. Correct.
Yeah.
98% of the time. Yeah. Some of them have been lost have been lost to crashes and things like that. So
Right.
there was a couple that I actually recreated uh, to.
Because you never you basically said you stuck basically to Illustrator, which is a
Yep. Yep.
vector-based program, but you never dabbled in Photoshop at all though, right? You only stayed with Illustrator?
Well, a little bit on like something like this, where and you can see like there's like a lot of texture to that
Right.
background. That would be something I would create the basic flat color in Illustrator, import that into its own Photoshop file, and then
Okay.
lay down a texture on that for sure. Yep. Yeah.
So, but
I
if you're
don't, but I
making a
don't illustrate in
poster
Photoshop. Like I don't have like the
okay,
pencil or anything like that. That
but you
I've never
making
been able
that
to get used to that.
but making that in Photoshop though, that's gonna be a huge image to make it big enough
Yeah.
for a poster size.
Yeah, because I do well, that's the other thing at Printful that I like, and I probably most print on demand places do this,
Right.
but they specifically had the 12 by 16 size, which has been for the last 15 years the size I made my posters at.
Okay.
So that was nice that it was a fairly direct size comparison, and then that also can scale up to 18 by 24.
Okay,
And
without
so
it getting
without resizing anything.
mm,
So that so every so once I went print on demand, every print in my shop that used to be only 12 by 16 is now available in two sizes, 12 by 16 and the 18 by 24. And
okay.
I wish they had the 24 by 32 size. That's the next scale up, but they jump from that to 24 by 36.
Right.
So
And so you don't have anything to I mean, so the benefit of having an Etsy page up, that's passive income. You don't have
yeah,
to really it's kind of a set and forget kind of
yep,
situation.
yeah, yep. I mean, I imagine if any of my customers ever had an issue, it's my responsibility to fix it.
Right.
And so they come to me, and then I would have to go to Printful and say, "Hey, this person was unhappy with this print. Please fix it."
Right.
But yeah, it's it's not a huge. I'll completely honestly, I'll sell one print a week maybe.
Right.
It's not
Yeah.
that huge of a thing. But I don't do any advertising at all. Like I don't have
Right. It's
any.
just there.
Yeah,
Right.
it's just a
So
link on my site.
I want to talk a little bit a bit too about some of these. So some of the designs you made on your wood cutting are mostly practice, or did you have something in mind when you made these? Especially looking at these little what are they called weebles? I can't remember what
Yeah,
they're called.
the
Yeah,
meeples. Yeah,
meeples.
yeah. No, almost all of that stuff was just me figuring out what the laser cutter can do,
Oh,
and
cool.
I Glowforge Glowforge calls their laser cutter a laser printer, and it just boggles my mind that that's how they what they call it. Like it's not a laser printer. There's nothing printing about it at all. So, but yeah, some of those were like pre-pandemic. I did do some craft shows just to kind of see what people might be interested in and get the games out there a little bit.
Right.
And I like the little dice jails right there. I'm pointing to them like you can see what I'm pointing to.
Right, yeah, the dice
Yeah,
jails that
yeah,
you made. Well, explain to us we're looking at for the audio listeners, something called Scrapped. What is this game with
yes.
these eggs? Is that a game you
Uh,
invented as well?
no, no, that is my version. There's an old bar game that's horse racing. So it's you have 12 in the bar game. You have 12 horses. You have to scratch four of the horses, and then you're rolling dice on the remaining 12 to advance them so many spaces.
Oh,
Every
okay.
time you roll that horse's number, or in this case, a spaceship's number, that ship advances one space. If you
Okay.
roll one of the scrapped or scratched horse or ship, you have to pay the amount of that ship, and those values vary from 5, 10, 15, or 20. So it's kind of it's a wagering kind of a game. And my friends and I played it one night, and there were 8 of us playing, and it was hysterical because there's no skill to it whatsoever. It's just straight up rolling the dice and then like either having to pay or moving a piece. And it was so much fun.
You mentioned earlier too, you had like you've been working on your bucket list a lot. What are
Yeah.
some of the other creative things you have on your bucket list that you're hoping to accomplish?
Number
Yeah.
one is a theatrical release movie poster.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I don't know who to talk to to get that done, but I can just see, like, in the same way as the Quick Stops comic cover,
Right,
imagine, the first 5 minutes of a movie as the poster. And then the
right,
ending is, if you'd like to see how it turns out, buy a
right,
ticket, you know?
right.
So I'd love to do that. I'd love to do a stamp. I don't
Mm,
know. I actually asked at the post office. It's like, who decides who gets to do stamp art? And it's a whole process. It's like a whole, like, you've got to be known. You got, kind of thing. So I don't know if that's ever going to happen, but maybe. I would love to do, and that's what these started out as. These were going to be stamps.
oh, cool.
Um, that just for myself, because they have those places online where you can just drop a photo into an actual barcoded stamp kind of a thing,
Right.
so it looks like you have a stamp with your artwork on
So
it.
listen, what do you have? Because you were talking about getting a Kickstarter started up pretty soon. We'll get you back on. We can talk about your
All right,
Kickstarters. What?
all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm hoping I have samples ordered now, but
Cool. Excellent.
yeah,
Well, thanks a lot, Mark. It was nice talking to you
thanks.
again.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Always happy to chat. Um,
Mm.
okay, I'm gonna go grab something real quick. I'll be right back.
All right. I'll edit this part out too.
Answer. Yeah.
Do 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 do. Time to edit. Da, 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 da. Do 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 do
I'm
do
back.
do
I'm
do
back.
do.
Okay. I'm very unprepared. That's completely took me 2 years. I'm completely unprepared.